Lena and Jake were a young couple who had just moved to Austin, Texas. They rented a small apartment and were looking for inexpensive furniture to fill it. They were browsing Craigslist and found an ad for a sofa, coffee table, and TV stand that was perfect for their living room. The price was only $200, and the seller claimed the furniture was in good condition. They contacted the seller, who said his name was Mark, and arranged to meet him in the parking lot outside his house. He said he would bring the furniture in his truck, and they could pay him in cash. Lena and Jake agreed and drove to the meeting place in their car. They arrived at the parking lot around 6 p.m. It was already dark, and there weren't many cars around. They saw a white pickup truck parked in the corner with furniture in the back. They parked next to it and got out of the car. "Hi, are you Mark?" asked Jake, approaching the pickup. A man stepped out of the driver's seat. He was tall and thin, with short brown hair and a balding beard. He wore a baseball cap, a plaid shirt, and jeans. He smiled and nodded. "Hi, yes, I'm Mark. It's nice to meet you." "You must be Lena and Jake," he said, shaking their hands. "That's us. Thanks for meeting us here," Lena said, smiling back. "No problem. I'm glad you're interested in the furniture. Come on, I'll show you around," Mark said, and led them to the back of the truck. He opened the back door and lifted the tarp that covered the furniture. Lena and Jake saw a beige sofa, a wooden coffee table, and a black TV stand. For the price, they looked pretty decent. "Well, what do you think?" asked Mark. "They look good," said Jake, examining the couch. "Yeah, they're pretty comfortable. I'm only selling them because I'm moving to another state and can't take them with me," said Mark. "Where are you moving to?" asked Lena. "Oh, I'm moving to California." "I've been offered a job there," Mark said. "That's great. What kind of job?" asked Lena. Mark hesitated for a moment. He looked around nervously. I'm a software engineer," he lied. "Wow, that's impressive," Lena said. "Yeah, well, you know how it is. The tech industry there is booming," Mark said. He glanced at his watch. "Look, I don't want to rush you, but I have to go soon. Do you want to buy furniture or not?" he asked. Lena and Jake looked at each other. They liked the furniture and didn't want to pass up the opportunity. "Sure, we'll take them," Jake said. "Great. Do you have the money?" asked Mark. Jake nodded and reached into his wallet in his back pocket. He pulled out $200 in bills and held them out to Mark. Mark quickly counted the money and put it in his pocket. "Thanks. Let me help you load them in the car," he said. He grabbed one end of the couch and lifted it up. "Can you get the other end?" he asked Jake. Jake nodded and grabbed the other end of the couch. When he did, he felt a sharp pain in his side. He looked down and saw blood dripping from his stomach. He had been stabbed. He choked and dropped the couch. He fell to the floor, clutching the wound. "Jake," yelled Lena. As Lena screamed, the man who had been pretending to be Mark pulled out a knife from his pocket and brandished it towards her. "Give me the keys to your car," he growled. Lena, trembling with fear, fumbled with her keys and handed them over to the man. The imposter quickly grabbed the keys and tossed them to his partner, who had been waiting in the driver's seat of the pickup truck. The second man got out of the truck, jumped into Lena and Jake's car and sped away, with the man who had been posing as Mark following closely behind. Lena, terrified and alone, knelt beside Jake, who was struggling to breathe. She tried to stop the bleeding with her hands, but the wound was too deep. She knew that Jake was not going to make it. As she cried, she remembered that she had her cell phone in her pocket. She quickly dialed 911 and explained what had happened. Within minutes, police cars arrived at the scene. They quickly secured the area and called an ambulance for Jake. Unfortunately, it was too late. Jake had lost too much blood and passed away before he could make it to the hospital. The police launched a manhunt for the robbers, and it didn't take long for them to be caught. The imposters turned out to be a pair of ex-convicts who had been released from prison a few months earlier. They had been using Craigslist to lure unsuspecting victims into their trap and rob them. Lena was devastated by Jake's death, but she found solace in the fact that the robbers had been caught. She hoped that they would be punished for what they had done, and that justice would be served. From that day on, she made a promise to herself that she would never trust anyone blindly again. Linda had always wanted a designer handbag. She loved fashion and style, but couldn't afford to buy the expensive accessories she admired in magazines and online. She worked as a waitress at a busy diner and barely made enough to pay her rent and bills. She had no savings, no family, and no friends to help her. She felt lonely and miserable in her small apartment in Brooklyn. One day on Craigslist, she saw an ad for a Louis Vuitton bag for sale for only $500. The bag was worth more than $3,000, and it looked authentic in the photos. Linda couldn't believe her luck. She had always dreamed of owning a Louis Vuitton bag, and this was her chance to get it at a bargain price. She quickly contacted the salesman, who said his name was Mike, and gave her his phone number. He told her he was moving out of the country and needed to sell his stuff quickly. He said he could meet her at a Starbucks near Central Park the next day at noon. Linda agreed to the deal and arranged to take time off work. She withdrew $500 from her bank account, which was almost all she had left. She also took her ID card and some money for subway fare. She put everything in her small purse and headed to the meeting place. She arrived at Starbucks 10 minutes early and looked around for Mike. She didn't see anyone who fit his description. A tall, blond man in his 30s, wearing a blue jacket and jeans. She decided to wait inside and order coffee. She checked her phone and saw that Mike had texted her that he was running late and would be here soon. She sat down at a table by the window and sipped her coffee nervously. She hoped Mike wasn't a crook or a thief. She'd heard stories of people being robbed or assaulted when they met strangers online. She wondered if she should have brought someone with her, but there was no one to ask. She trusted her instincts and hoped for the best. She looked at her watch and saw that it was 12:15 p.m., and Mike was still gone. She texted him again and asked where he was. He replied that he was stuck in traffic and would be there in 10 minutes. Linda felt annoyed, but decided to wait a little longer. She really needed that bag, and she didn't want to miss the opportunity. She finished her coffee and threw the cup away. She looked outside and saw a man walking toward the entrance of the Starbucks. He was tall, blond, wearing a blue jacket and jeans. He looked like Mike. Linda felt relieved and excited. She got up from the table and walked over to him. "Hi, are you Mike?" she asked him with a smile. He nodded and smiled back. "Yeah, that's me." "And you must be Linda." "Yes, that's me. Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too. Sorry I'm late." "That's okay. Did you bring the money?" "Yes, I did." "Great. Let me show you the bag." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a large brown paper bag. He opened it slightly and showed Linda what was inside. Linda caught a glimpse of the Louis Vuitton logo on the leather. "Wow, that looks amazing," she said. "It's really amazing," he said. "It's brand new, never been used." "Can I take a closer look at it?" Sure. He held out a paper bag to her and watched as she opened it completely. Linda pulled out the Louis Vuitton bag and examined it carefully. In her eyes it looked real. It had a signature monogram pattern, gold hardware, a red lining, and a tag with a serial number inside. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's yours," he said. She looked at him appreciatively. "Thank you so much." He smiled warmly. "You're welcome." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope with $500 inside. She held it out to him. "Here you go," she said. He took the envelope and opened it slightly and quickly counted the bills. "Great," he said. He put the envelope in his pocket. "Thank you," he said. They smiled at each other. "Well, I guess that's it," he said. "Yes," she said. They embraced awkwardly. "It was a pleasure doing business with you," he said. "You too," she said. They let go of each other. "Have a good day," he said. "You too," she said. He turned and walked out of the Starbucks. Linda looked after him with a happy sigh. She couldn't believe she had just bought a $500 Louis Vuitton bag. She thought she had won the lottery. She clutched the bag to her chest and smiled broadly. She decided to go home right away and enjoy her new purchase. She walked out of the Starbucks with a springy stride. Linda didn't notice that Mike followed her outside. She didn't notice that he pulled a knife from his backpack. She didn't notice that he walked behind her with a sinister expression on his face. She didn't notice until it was too late. He grabbed her from behind. Linda screamed as Mike attacked her. He pulled her bag from her hand, tearing the strap and causing Linda to fall to the ground. Linda was stunned and didn't know what to do. She watched helplessly as Mike ran away with her bag, which contained not only the expensive designer handbag, but also her ID card and all the cash she had withdrawn from the bank. Linda was in shock. She sat on the ground, clutching her torn bag, feeling violated and helpless. She realized she had been scammed and deceived by Mike. She had trusted him, and he had taken advantage of her. Linda knew she had to report the incident to the police, but she didn't know where to start. She had never been in a situation like this before. She felt alone and vulnerable, like a victim of a crime. She had lost her money, her ID, and her sense of security. Linda took a deep breath and stood up. She looked around for help, but no one seemed to notice her distress. She felt invisible, like a ghost. She knew she had to find a way to get back on her feet and move on, but she didn't know how. She felt lost and defeated. Ivan was a college student who had been saving up for months to buy his first car. He had been browsing Craigslist, looking for a good deal on a used car. One day he saw an ad that caught his eye. It was a 2010 Honda Civic, in good condition, with low mileage and only $5,000. Ivan thought it was too good to be true, but decided to contact the seller anyway. The seller responded quickly and said his name was Mark. He said he was selling the car because he had to move out of state for work and needed money right away. He said he could meet Ivan at a nearby parking lot the next day and asked him to bring cash with him. Ivan agreed and arranged to meet Mark at 10 a.m. The next day, Ivan withdrew $5,000 from his bank account and put the money in an envelope. He took the bus to the parking lot and looked around for Mark's car. He saw a silver Honda Civic parked in the corner with a man sitting inside. Ivan approached the car and knocked on the window. The man rolled down his window and smiled at Ivan. He looked about 30 years old, with short brown hair and stubble. He was wearing a blue shirt and jeans. "Hi, you must be Ivan," he said. "I'm Mark. Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too," Ivan said. "Is this the car you're selling?" "Yes, it is," Mark said. "Would you like to take a look?" "Sure," said Ivan. Mark got out of the car and opened the trunk. He showed Ivan the spare tire, the jack, and the tools. Then he opened the hood and showed the engine, battery, and oil. He explained that he had taken good care of the car and that it had no problems. Ivan nodded, impressed by Mark's knowledge and confidence. He asked if he could take the car for a test drive. "Sure," Mark said. "But can I see the money first?" Ivan hesitated for a moment. He was uncomfortable handing over the money before he got behind the wheel of the car. But he also didn't want to pass up the opportunity. He decided to trust Mark. "Sure," Ivan said. "Here you go." He pulled an envelope from his backpack and held it out to Mark. Mark took the envelope and opened it. He quickly counted the bills and smiled. "Thank you," he said. You're a smart customer. He put the envelope in his pocket. So, are you ready to drive? He asked. Yes, Ivan replied. Mark handed him the keys. Here you go, he said. The car is all yours. Ivan felt a rush of excitement. He couldn't believe he had just bought his first car. He got in the driver's seat and fastened his seat belt. Mark got in the passenger seat. Let's go, Ivan said. He started the car and drove out of the parking lot. He drove out of the parking lot onto the street. So, where are you from? Asked Mark. I'm from Chicago, said Ivan. Me too, said Mark. What do you do? I'm a student, said Ivan. What are you studying? Business administration. That's cool. They made small talk as they drove through the neighborhood. Mark seemed friendly and at ease. He complimented Evan on his driving skills and gave him some tips on car care. Evan felt more relaxed and comfortable with Mark. He thought he got a good deal with a nice guy. He decided to go back to the parking lot. Hey, can we stop at the gas station? Asked Mark. Why? Asked Evan. I need to go to the bathroom, said Mark. Okay, said Ivan. He saw a gas station nearby and pulled over to the side of the road. Mark got out of the car. I'll be right back, he said. He walked toward the gas station building. Ivan was waiting in the car. He looked at his new car with pride and joy. He couldn't wait to show it off to his friends and family. He checked his phone for messages. He saw that his mother had texted him. She asked him if he had bought a car yet. He replied that he had just bought it and that it was awesome. She congratulated him and asked him to send her a picture of it. He pulled out his phone and took a picture of himself with his new car. He sent it to his mom. She replied that she was happy for him and that she loved him. He smiled at her message. He looked up from the phone screen. He saw Mark running toward him from across the street. He was holding something in his hand. It looked like a gun. Ivan felt a rush of fear. He didn't understand what was happening. He saw Mark point the gun at him through the windshield. He heard him shout something unintelligible. He saw him pull the trigger. Ivan instinctively ducked as he heard a loud explosion. He felt something hit him in the shoulder. He felt pain and shock. He looked at his shoulder and saw blood seeping through his shirt. He realized he had been shot. He screamed in pain and horror. He saw Mark open the door and grab him by the collar. He felt Mark dragging him behind him. Ivan tried to fight back, but he was weak from the shock of being shot. He felt Mark's grip tighten on his collar as he dragged him out of the car and onto the ground. Ivan's head hit the pavement hard, and he felt a sharp pain in his temple. He tried to crawl away, but Mark kicked him in the ribs. Ivan gasped for air as the wind was knocked out of him. He felt Mark rifling through his pockets, taking his phone, wallet, and the envelope of cash. He heard Mark laughing as he got back into the car and drove away. Ivan lay there, bleeding and helpless. He thought he was going to die. He couldn't move his left arm or leg, and his vision was blurry. He managed to reach for his phone with his good arm and called 911. He told them what had happened and where he was. He heard the sound of sirens in the distance and felt a sense of relief. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived and Evan was rushed to the hospital. He underwent emergency surgery to remove the bullet from his shoulder. He was in a lot of pain and was heavily sedated. The police arrived at the gas station and began their investigation. They interviewed witnesses, collected evidence, and reviewed surveillance footage from nearby cameras. Within a few hours, they had identified Mark as the suspect. They discovered that he had used a fake name and a stolen car to lure Ivan into a trap. They tracked down the car and found it abandoned in a nearby alley. The police issued an alert for Mark and circulated his description to other law enforcement agencies. 2 days later, Mark was arrested in a neighboring state. He was caught trying to sell the stolen car to a pawn shop. He was charged with armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and car theft. He was held in jail without bail pending his trial. Ivan was discharged from the hospital a week later. He was still in pain and had to wear a sling on his left arm. But he was grateful to be alive. He thanked the police for their swift action and vowed to testify against Mark in court. A few months later, Ivan attended Mark's trial as a witness. He testified about the events that led up to the shooting and identified Mark as the perpetrator. He described how Mark had lured him into a trap and robbed him at gunpoint. He also showed the jury his scar and explained how the bullet had narrowly missed his vital organs. The jury found Mark guilty on all charges and sentenced him to 20 years in prison. Ivan felt a sense of closure and justice. He realized that he had been lucky to survive the ordeal and that it had taught him a valuable lesson about trusting strangers. He also learned to appreciate life more and to never take anything for granted. Linda has always had a passion for technology. She loved exploring new gadgets and devices that could make her life easier and more fun. She was especially interested in smart flash drives, small storage devices that could connect to any computer and perform various tasks, such as hacking, encrypting, or deleting data. She had heard that some hackers were using them to break into secure systems and steal valuable information. Linda wanted to get her hands on one of these smart flash drives, but they were very expensive and hard to find. She searched the internet for a long time until she came across an ad on Craigslist that offered a brand new smart flash drive for only $200. The seller claimed it was the latest model, with 128 gigabytes capacity and 10 gips speed. Linda was intrigued by the offer and decided to contact the seller. She sent him an email asking for more information and pictures of the device. He quickly responded, saying that he had bought it from a friend who worked for a technology company, but that he no longer needed it. He attached some pictures of the flash drive, which looked sleek and shiny, with a small LED light and a USB-C port. He also said he could meet her at a nearby Starbucks the next day at noon. Linda agreed to the deal and made an appointment. She withdrew $200 from her bank account and put it in her purse. She also took her laptop with her to test out the flash drive before she bought it. She was very excited and curious to see what the device could do. She arrived at Starbucks 10 minutes before noon and looked around for the salesman. She had seen his picture in her email profile, so she knew what he looked like. He was a tall, thin man with short brown hair and glasses. He was wearing a black sweatshirt and jeans. She noticed him sitting at a corner table and holding a paper bag in his hand. He waved and smiled at her. Linda walked up to him and introduced herself. "Hi, I'm Linda, and you must be Mike," she said. "Hi, Linda. Nice to meet you," he said. "I have a flash drive here." He opened a paper bag and pulled out a small box. He held it out to her and said, "Here it is, the smart flash drive you wanted." Linda took the box and examined it. It looked exactly like the pictures he had sent her. She opened it and saw the flash drive inside, wrapped in plastic. "Looks great," she said. "Can I try it on my laptop?" "Sure, go ahead," he said. Linda pulled her laptop out of her backpack and turned it on. She inserted a flash drive into one of the USB ports and waited for it to be recognized by the system. She opened File Explorer and saw that the flash drive had a name, CMAT 2021. She clicked on it and saw that it had several folders and files on it. She opened one of the folders that was labeled Hacking Tools. It contained various programs and scripts that could be used to hack into various systems and networks. She opened another folder that was labeled Encryption Tools. It contained various algorithms and keys that could be used to encrypt or decrypt data. She opened another folder which was called Deletion Tools. It contained various methods and commands that could be used to permanently delete data. She was amazed at what she saw. The flash drive was indeed very smart and powerful. It seemed to have everything she needed to be a hacker. She looked at Mike and said, "This is incredible. How did you get this?" He shrugged and said, "Like I said, I got it from a friend who works for a technology company." He said they were developing them for some government project, but he managed to smuggle one out for me. "Wow," she said. "That's amazing." She decided to buy the flash drive without any hesitation. She reached into her purse and pulled out $200 in cash. "Here you go," she said, holding out the money to him. He took the money and quickly counted it. "Thank you," he said. He put the money in his pocket and stood up. "Well, I guess this is goodbye then," he said. He held out his hand for a handshake. Linda shook his hand and said, "Thank you for selling me this." He smiled and said, "No problem." He let go of her hand and turned around. But no sooner had he left than he suddenly grabbed her purse from her shoulder and ran out the door. Linda was shocked by his sudden action. She screamed and ran after him. "Hey, stop, thief," she shouted. She ran out of the Starbucks and saw him running across the street. She ran after him, dodging cars and pedestrians. She saw him turn into an alley and ran after him. She went into the alley and saw him standing still, holding her purse in one hand. She approached him cautiously, trying to grab her purse back. But as soon as she got close, he pepper sprayed her in the face and fled. Linda fell to the ground, coughing and gasping for air. She couldn't see anything, her eyes were burning and watering. She lay there for a few moments, trying to catch her breath. Then she stood up and stumbled back to the street. Several people came to her aid, offering her water and tissues. They asked her what happened, but she could barely speak. She managed to say that she had been robbed and pepper sprayed. They called the police and an ambulance. The police arrived within minutes, but the thief was nowhere to be found. They took Linda's statement and searched the area, but they couldn't find any trace of him. Linda was taken to the hospital, where she was treated for pepper spray exposure. Her eyes were washed out, and she was given medication to ease the burning and stinging. She was discharged a few hours later and went back to her apartment, feeling shaken and violated. She realized that the smart flash drive and her purse were gone. The thief had managed to sell them and make a quick profit. She felt angry and frustrated. She had been duped by a scammer and a thief. She had lost her money, her personal belongings, and her sense of security. The police continued to investigate the case, but they couldn't find any solid leads. Linda tried to move on and focus on her work and her hobbies. She realized that she had to be more careful and cautious when buying things online or from strangers. She learned a valuable lesson from this experience, that the world can be a dangerous and unpredictable place, and that one should always be vigilant and alert. She hoped that the thief would be caught and brought to justice, but she knew that the chances were slim. Alex was a photography enthusiast who loved to capture the beauty of nature and people. He had a collection of cameras and lenses that he used for different occasions. He was always looking for new equipment to improve his skills and expand his portfolio. One day, he saw an advertisement on Craigslist for a professional-grade camera that he had always wanted to own. The seller claimed that he was moving out of the country and needed to sell his camera quickly. He offered it for $2,000, which was half the market price. Alex thought it was too good to be true, but he decided to contact the seller anyway. The seller replied to his email and gave him his phone number. He said his name was Tom and that he lived in Orlando, about an hour away from Alex's home in Tampa. He suggested that they meet at a public parking lot near a mall. He said he would bring the camera and the receipt, and that he only accepted cash. Alex agreed to meet him the next day at noon. He withdrew $2,000 from his bank account and put it in an envelope. He also took his camera and lens, which he planned to trade with Tom if he liked it. He drove to Orlando and arrived at the parking lot 10 minutes before the scheduled time. He parked his car and looked around for Tom. he saw a black SUV with tinted windows parked in a corner. He walked towards it and saw a man sitting in the driver's seat. He waved at him and approached the window. "Hi, are you Tom?" Alex asked. The man rolled down the window and smiled. He had short brown hair and a stubble beard. He wore a blue polo shirt and sunglasses. "Hey, Alex." "Yeah, I'm Tom." "Nice to meet you," he said. "Nice to meet you too. Do you have the camera?" Alex asked. "Sure, it's right here." Tom reached to the back seat and picked up a black backpack. He opened it and showed Alex the camera inside. It looked brand new and shiny. "Wow, it's beautiful," Alex said. "Yeah, it is. I've barely used it. It's too bad I have to sell it," Tom said. "Why are you moving out of the country?" Alex asked. "I got a job offer in Dubai. It's a great opportunity for me," Tom said. "That's awesome." "Congratulations," Alex said. "Thanks. So, do you want to see the camera?" Tom asked. "Sure. Can I hold it?" Alex asked. "Of course." Tom handed him the backpack through the window. Alex took it and opened it again. He took out the camera and examined it carefully. It felt heavy and solid in his hands. He turned it on and checked the settings and the battery level. Everything seemed fine. He looked at Tom and smiled. "It's perfect," he said. "Great. So, do you have cash?" asked Tom. "Yes, I do." Alex reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope of money. He held it out to Tom through the window. Tom took it and quickly opened it. He counted the bills and nodded. "Looks good," he said. He put the envelope in his pocket and smiled at Alex. "Thanks for doing business with me," he said. "No problem." "Thanks for selling me this wonderful camera," Alex said. He was about to throw his backpack on his shoulder when he heard another voice behind him. "Hey, buddy, what do you got there?" Alex turned around and saw another man standing behind him. He was taller and bulkier than him. He was taller and bulkier than Tom, with blonde hair and a tattoo on his neck. He was wearing a black leather jacket and jeans. He had a menacing expression on his face. Alex felt a rush of fear in his chest. "Who are you?" he asked nervously. "I'm Jake, Tom's partner," the man said. He stepped closer to Alex and grabbed his arm. "Let go of me," yelled Alex. He tried to break free from Jake's grip, but Jake was too strong for him. "What are you doing?" asked Alex. "We're doing this," said Jake. He slapped Alex in the face with his free hand. The force of the slap made Alex lose his balance and fall to the ground. He hit his head on the concrete pavement and everything went black. He didn't know how long he was out, but when he woke up, he felt a sharp pain in his head. He groaned and tried to sit up, but his body felt weak and numb. He looked around and saw that Tom and Jake were gone. His backpack with his camera and lens was missing too. He realized that he had been robbed. He took out his phone and called 911. He reported the incident and gave his location. He told the operator that he had been hit and robbed and that he needed medical attention. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived at the scene. The paramedics examined him and found that he had a concussion and a few bruises on his face and arms. They gave him some painkillers and took him to the hospital for further treatment. At the hospital, Alex was questioned by the police. He gave them a detailed description of Tom and Jake and their car. He also told them about the camera and the money that he had brought for the exchange. The police launched an investigation and circulated a description of the suspects and their vehicle. A few hours later, they located the car on a highway and chased it down. Tom and Jake tried to evade the police, but they were eventually caught. The police found Alex's camera and lens in the car, along with the envelope of cash. They also found a few other stolen items, including jewelry and electronics. Tom and Jake were arrested and charged with robbery, assault, and possession of stolen property. Alex was relieved that the robbers were caught, and that his camera and lens were returned to him. He was grateful to the police and the paramedics for their help and support. He learned a valuable lesson about buying expensive items from strangers and vowed to be more cautious in the future. In 2016 in Los Angeles, a young woman named Jessica was looking for a new cell phone. She had been saving up for months to buy a smartphone that would allow her to stay in touch with family and friends, take pictures, and browse the internet. On Craigslist, she saw an ad for a Samsung for sale that was in good condition and within her budget. She contacted the seller, who said his name was Mike, and arranged to meet him at a Starbucks near his apartment. Jessica was anxious and nervous as she drove to the meeting place. She had never bought anything on Craigslist before. She had heard that it was a popular and reliable way to find great deals online. She hoped Mike was honest and trustworthy, and that the firm was as good as he claimed. She parked the car in the parking lot and walked toward the cafe, carrying her purse with her money and papers. She noticed Mike sitting at a table near the entrance to the Starbucks. He was a tall and muscular man with short brown hair and a bristly beard. He was dressed in a black leather jacket and jeans, and a backpack lay on the ground beside him. He smiled and waved at Jessica as she approached him. "Hi, you must be Jessica. And I'm Mike. Nice to meet you," he said as he stood up and shook her hand. "Hi, Mike. Nice to meet you too," Jessica said, smiling back. "Thanks for coming." "I have my phone here," he said, reaching into his backpack and pulling out a black box. He opened the box and showed Jessica the phone. It looked shiny and new, with no scratches or dents. Jessica felt a rush of excitement when she saw it. "Wow, it looks great," she said. "Yeah, it's practically new. I only used it for a few weeks. Then I got an iPhone as a gift from my girlfriend, so I don't need this one anymore," Mike said. "It's a fluke. How much do you want for it?" asked Jessica. "I'm asking $300, but I'm willing to bargain," said Mike. Jessica thought for a moment. She had $350 in her purse, which was all the money she'd been saving for her phone. She wanted to get a good deal, but at the same time she didn't want to lose the opportunity to buy a phone. "Would you mind taking $250? she asked. Mike pretended to think for a while, then shook his head. "I'm sorry, that's too little. How about $280? he said. Jessica hesitated. She wanted to save some money for herself, but she also really wanted the phone. "Okay, fine. $280, she agreed. "Great. Do you have cash?" asked Mike. "Yes, I do," Jessica said. She opened her purse and pulled out her wallet. She counted out $280 in bills and handed it to Mike. Mike took the money and put it in his pocket. He smiled and handed Jessica a box of phones. "Here you go, enjoy your new phone," he said. Jessica took the box and thanked him. She opened it and turned the phone on. It worked fine. She felt happy and relieved that she had made a good purchase. "Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate it," she said. "No problem. It was a pleasure doing business with you," Mike said. Then he looked at his watch and pretended to be surprised. I'd look at the time. "I've got to go. I have another meeting in half an hour," he said. He picked up his backpack and slung it over his shoulder. "It was nice meeting you, Jessica." "Have a good day," he said. He waved goodbye and walked quickly away. Jessica waved back and looked after him. She was a little sad that he was leaving so soon, but she knew he had other things to do. She decided to stop at Starbucks and order a coffee before heading back to her car. She hung her purse on her shoulder and walked to the door of the coffee shop. She didn't notice that Mike turned around and followed behind her. He waited until she reached the Starbucks door, then ran up to her and grabbed her arm. He yanked her back with force and pushed her toward his car, which was parked next to her car in the parking lot. He threw her into the back seat of his car and slammed the door behind him. He jumped into the driver's seat and started the engine. He drove out of the parking lot at high speed, leaving Jessica's car with the keys in the ignition. Jessica screamed and struggled as she realized what had happened. She fought back, digging her nails into Mike's face and kicking him as hard as she could. She managed to escape from his grasp and opened the car door, jumping out of the moving vehicle. Mike sped away with Jessica's purse, which contained her money, documents, and phone. She was left alone and shaken, with bruises and scratches on her body. Fortunately, some bystanders witnessed the incident and called the police. After a thorough investigation, the authorities were able to track down Mike and arrest him for robbery and assault. Jessica was able to recover her stolen belongings and received medical attention for her injuries. She learned a valuable lesson about being careful when dealing with strangers online and in person. Jim always dreamed of having a big screen TV. He loved watching movies and sports and dreamed of having a home theater that would make his friends jealous. He saved money for months, working part-time at the diner and cutting back on his expenses. Finally, he saved enough money to buy a used TV on Craigslist. He found a good deal online. A 65-inch Samsung Smart TV for just $500. The seller claimed the TV was in perfect condition and that he was selling it because he was moving to another state. Jim contacted the seller and arranged to meet him at his home in a rural area near Austin, Texas. Jim drove his old pickup truck to the address the salesman gave him. It was a sunny afternoon in June 2018, and Jim felt anxious and nervous. He hoped the TV was as good as it looked to the pictures and that the seller was honest and reliable. He pulled up to the seller's house, which was a dilapidated trailer surrounded by junk and weeds. He parked his truck in front of the trailer and got out, carrying a backpack with $500 in cash. He knocked on the door and waited. The door was opened by a man. He was tall and thin, with long greasy hair and a thick beard. He was wearing a stained t-shirt and jeans, with a cigarette dangling from his mouth. He looked at Jim with a smirk. "Hi, you must be Jim," he said. "I'm Dave, the guy who sells the TV." "Hi, Dave," Jim said, trying to sound friendly. "Nice to meet you." "Come on in," Dave said, stepping aside. "The TV is right over here." Jim followed Dave into the trailer. It was dark and dirty inside, with piles of clothes, dishes, and trash lying everywhere. In the corner of the living room, Jim saw a large cardboard box. It had Samsung written on it in black marker. "Is that it?" asked Jim, pointing to the box. "Yes, that's it," said Dave. "The TV is inside. I just packed it this morning." "Can I see it?" asked Jim. Sure, said Dave. "But let me see the money first." Jim hesitated. He didn't like Dave's behavior. He looked nervous and impatient and kept looking around as if waiting for someone. "I'll show you the money after I watch TV," Jim said. Dave frowned. "Come on, kid," he said. "Don't be like that. I'm not trying to rip you off or anything. I just want to make sure you have the money." Jim felt uneasy. He had a bad feeling about this deal. He wished he had brought someone with him, or at least told him where he was going. "Listen, Dave," he said. "I don't mean to be rude, but I don't trust you. How do I know that there really is a TV in that box? How do I know it works? How do I know you're not going to take my money and run away?" The expression on Dave's face changed. He dropped his cigarette on the floor and stepped on it. He clutched his fist and walked towards Jim. "What did you say?" he said, his voice rising. "I said I don't trust you," Jim repeated, taking a step back. Dave grabbed Jim by the collar of his shirt and pushed him against the wall. "You think I'm a liar?" he yelled. "You think I'm trying to scam you? You little punk." He punched Jim in the face, knocking him down. Jim felt his nose bleeding and his vision blurring. He tried to get up, but Dave kicked him in the stomach, making him gasp for air. "You're going to regret this," Dave said, grabbing the backpack with the money. And this TV is mine now. Got it. He picked up the cardboard box and walked out of the trailer, leaving Jim on the floor, groaning in pain. Jim stayed there for a few minutes, trying to catch his breath and gather his thoughts. He realized he had been a fool to come here alone and to trust a stranger on the internet. He had lost his money and his dream of having a big screen TV. He stumbled to his feet and walked out of the trailer. He saw Dave's pickup truck driving away with the cardboard box in the back. He knew he couldn't catch him or call the police in time. He got into his own truck and drove back to Austin, feeling defeated and humiliated. He knew he had learned a valuable lesson, but it didn't ease the pain in his nose or his wallet. He decided to take a break from Craigslist and online deals, at least for a while. He also decided to invest in a good security system and to learn self-defense, just in case he ever had to face a crook like Dave again. Robert had always loved music. Ever since he was a little boy, he dreamed of becoming a famous musician and performing in front of huge crowds. He learned to play guitar, piano and drums, and practiced every day in his small apartment in Brooklyn. He also saved up money from his part-time job at a coffee shop to buy new musical instruments and equipment. One day, he saw an ad on Craigslist that caught his eye. The seller claimed to have a rare vintage Gibson Les Paul guitar for sale at a very low price. Robert had always wanted such a guitar, but he knew they were very expensive and hard to find. He decided to contact the seller and make an appointment. The salesman, who called himself Mike, told Robert to meet him in the parking lot near Central Park at 9 p.m. He said he would bring the guitar and show it to him before closing the deal. Robert agreed and took the subway to the location. He was very excited and nervous at the same time. He hoped the guitar was real and not a scam. He arrived at the parking lot a few minutes before 9 p.m. As he looked around, he saw several parked cars, but neither Mike nor the guitar were in sight. He decided to wait and texted Mike to let him know he was coming. Mike replied that he was on his way and asked Robert to wait outside the blue van. Robert walked over to the blue van and waited. He checked his phone again and saw that it was 9:15 p.m. He began to wonder where Mike was and why he was waiting so long. He began to feel anxious and suspicious. He thought about leaving, but then he heard a voice behind him. "Hey, are you Robert?" Robert turned around and saw a man in a leather jacket and sunglasses. He had a backpack on his shoulder and a smile on his face. "Yeah, that's me. Are you Mike?" asked Robert. "Right. Sorry I'm late. I had car trouble," said Mike. He walked over to Robert and held out his hand. "Nice to meet you, Robert. I've got my guitar here in my backpack. Would you like to see it?" said Mike. Robert shook his hand and nodded. "Sure I do," said Robert. He followed Mike to the back of the van, where Mike opened his backpack and pulled out a black guitar case. "Here it is, the Gibson Les Paul you were looking for," said Mike. He opened the case and showed Robert the guitar inside. It looked shiny and new, with a dark brown body and cream-colored fingerboard. It had 4 controls and 2 humbuckers. Robert's eyes widened when he saw the guitar. It looked exactly like the one he had seen in pictures and videos on the internet. "Wow, what a beauty," said Robert. He reached out to touch it, but Mike quickly yanked it away. "Not so fast, buddy. It's not a toy. It's a masterpiece," said Mike. He closed the case and zipped up his backpack. "So do you want it or not?" asked Mike. Robert nodded impatiently. Yes, I do," said Robert. He took his wallet out of his pocket and counted the money. He had $2,000 in cash that he had withdrawn from his bank account earlier that day. He knew that was more than enough to buy a guitar. "Okay, let's make it quick," said Mike. He snatched the wallet from Robert's hands and opened it. "Hey, what are you doing?" asked Robert. Mike ignored him and counted the money inside. $2,000, That's not enough, Mike said. He looked at Robert with a chuckle. That guitar is worth at least $5,000. You're trying to rip me off, aren't you? Said Mike. Robert felt confused and scared. What? No, I'm not. You said in your ad that you were selling it for $1,500, said Robert. Mike shook his head and laughed. It was just a decoy, kid. You fell for it like a sucker, said Mike. He tossed Robert's wallet back at him and motioned to two other men who had come out of the van. These are my partners. We don't like people who waste our time and money. You're going to pay for it, kid, said Mike. Robert realized he was in trouble. He tried to run, but the men caught him and beat him up. They took all his money, as well as his shoes and phone. Passers-by called the police and an ambulance, and after a while the robbers were caught. Robert ended up in the hospital with a broken nose and several bruises. He was traumatized by the experience and lost all his savings. He had to quit his job at the coffee shop because he couldn't work with a broken nose. Despite everything, Robert didn't give up on his dream of becoming a musician. He took some time to heal and then started playing again. He even wrote a song about his experience and performed it in small clubs around Brooklyn. In 2018 in Atlanta, Georgia, a young man named Timothy Bosworth was browsing Craigslist looking for a great deal on a new laptop. He was in college majoring in computer science, and he needed a powerful machine to run his programs and projects. He had saved some money working part-time at a pizza place, but he still couldn't afford to buy a new laptop at the store. He came across an ad that caught his eye. It offered a MacBook Pro with state-of-the-art features and capabilities. The seller claimed to have won it in a lottery and that he didn't need it because he already had another laptop. He was asking $800, which was less than half a retail price. Timothy thought that was too good to be true, but decided to contact the seller anyway. He sent him a text message and asked if the laptop was still available. The seller quickly responded and said yes. He said he lived in Marietta, a suburb of Atlanta, and that he could meet Timothy anywhere in the city. Timothy offered to meet at a Starbucks near his campus, but sellers said he would prefer to meet at a gas station near his home. He said it was more convenient for him and that he didn't want to drive too far. Timothy hesitated, but agreed. He thought that maybe the salesman was just being cautious and didn't want to reveal his address. Timothy got in his car and drove to the gas station. He checked his phone and saw that the seller had sent him a picture of the laptop and its serial number. He checked the serial number and made sure it matched the model and year of manufacture of the MacBook Pro he wanted. He felt more confident and enthusiastic about the deal. He arrived at the gas station and parked his car out front. As he looked around, he saw a man standing next to a red pickup truck. The man waved at him and smiled. He was wearing a baseball cap, sunglasses, and a leather jacket. He looked about 30 or 40 years old. "Hi, are you Timothy?" the man asked. "Yes, I am. And you must be the salesman," said Timothy. "That's right." "I'm Mike," said the man. He opened the door of his truck and pulled out a black backpack. He walked over to Timothy and handed him the backpack. "Here you go, buddy. There's a laptop inside. You can check it out if you want," Mike said. Timothy opened the backpack and saw a silver laptop wrapped in bubble wrap. He pulled it out and unwrapped it. It looked brand new and shiny. He opened it and pressed the power button. It turned on and the Apple logo appeared on the screen. "Wow, this is amazing," Timothy said. "I told you, kid, this is a great deal," Mike said. Timothy looked at Mike and smiled. "Thanks a lot for that," Timothy said. "No problem, buddy. Now, do you have any cash?" asked Mike. Timothy nodded and reached into his pocket. He pulled out an envelope containing $800 in cash. He counted the bills and handed them to Mike. Mike took the envelope and opened it. He quickly scanned the bills with his eyes and nodded. "Sounds good to me," Mike said. He put the envelope in his jacket pocket and smiled. "Well, it's been a pleasure doing business with you, Timothy," Mike said. He held out his hand for a handshake. Timothy shook his hand and smiled back. "Likewise, Mike," Timothy said. Mike let go of his hand and turned around. "Have a good day, buddy," Mike said. He walked back to his truck and got in. He started the engine and drove off. Timothy watched him drive away and felt happy. He had just bought his dream laptop for less. He couldn't wait to use it for schoolwork and entertainment. He closed the laptop and put it back in his backpack. He slung it over his shoulder and went to his car. He opened the door and got in. He put the backpack on the passenger seat and buckled up. He started the car and drove away from the gas station. He decided to go back to his dorm room and set up his new laptop. He turned on the radio and hummed his favorite songs. He didn't notice that another car was following him from behind. It was a black sedan with tinted windows. Inside sat two men wearing masks and gloves. They had been watching Timothy from afar since he arrived at the gas station. They had seen him exchange money with Mike and take his laptop from him. They knew that Timothy had just been scammed by Mike, who was their partner in crime. They knew that Mike had sold in a fake laptop that looked like the real thing, but didn't work at all. They knew that Mike had used fake bills from another scammer who had sold in a fake laptop to pay for it. They also knew that Timothy had $800 in cash in his backpack, which they wanted to take from him. They followed Timothy's car until they pulled into a secluded street with no cars or pedestrians. They accelerated and crashed into Timothy's car from behind. Timothy felt a sharp jolt as his car jerked forward from the impact. He lost control of his steering wheel and crashed into a nearby tree. The airbags deployed and he hit his head on the steering wheel. Before he could recover from the shock, the two masked men approached his car. They smashed the window with a bat and pulled him out of the car. "Give us your backpack, and we won't hurt you," one of the men said. Timothy was still dizzy from the impact and couldn't react fast enough. He tried to resist, but the men hit him with the bat and knocked him out. When he woke up, he was lying on the ground, bleeding from his head. His backpack was gone, and his laptop was nowhere to be seen. He tried to get up, but his body was in pain. He looked around and saw his car and the black sedan speeding away in the distance. He realized that he had been attacked and robbed. He reached for his phone, but it was also gone. He was stranded and alone, with no way to call for help. He managed to crawl to the sidewalk and lay there, hoping that someone would find him soon. He felt scared and helpless, wondering how he would survive this ordeal. Cassandra had been saving up for months to buy a car. She was tired of taking the bus to work every day and wanted more freedom and convenience. She searched the internet for a good deal and found it on Craigslist. A man named Mark was selling his car for only $6,000. He claimed he was moving out of state and needed to sell the car quickly. Cassandra contacted him and arranged to meet him in the parking lot outside his apartment. She withdrew the money from her bank account and put it in an envelope. She took a cab to the meeting place and waited for Mark to show up. She checked her phone and saw that he texted her that he was running late and asked her to wait for him. She replied that it was fine and sat down on a bench near the entrance to the parking lot. She noticed a man walking toward her from across the street. He was wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. He seemed familiar to her, but she couldn't recognize him. He walked up to her and smiled. "Hi, are you Cassandra?" he asked. "Yes, I am." "And you're Mark?" she asked. "Right. Sorry I'm late. I had some transportation problems," he said. He held out his hand, and she shook it. He seemed friendly enough, but she felt a little uncomfortable. She wondered why he wore sunglasses on a cloudy day. "So, where's your car?" she asked. "Over there," he pointed to the blue car parked in the corner of the lot. "Can I see it?" she asked. Sure. Let's go, he said. He led her to the car. She followed him, clutching the envelope in her purse. She hoped the car was in good condition and that it wasn't a scam. They reached the car and he opened the driver's door. Here she is. She's in great condition. I've taken good care of her, he said. He gestured for her to get in the car and check her out. She hesitated for a moment, but then decided to agree. She got in the car and looked around. The interior was clean and smelled fresh. There were no warning lights on the dashboard. The mileage was low for a 10-year-old car. She turned to him and smiled. Looks good, she said. Thanks. It's a great car. You won't regret buying it, he said. He got in the passenger seat and closed the door. So, do you have the money? He asked nonchalantly. She nodded and reached for her purse. Yes, I do, she said. She opened her purse and pulled out an envelope. She held it out to him. Here, she said. He took the envelope and opened it. He quickly counted the bills and put them in his pocket. Thank you very much, she said. He smiled slyly and held out a knife, pointing it at her. Now give me your purse, he demanded. Cassandra's heart raced as she realized what was happening. She quickly grabbed her purse and tried to run out of the car, but he caught her by the arm and pulled her back in. He tried to grab her purse, but she fought back, hitting him with her other hand and kicking him with her feet. They struggled for a few moments until Cassandra managed to break free. She opened the car door and ran out, screaming for help. The man chased after her, but she managed to outrun him and find refuge in a nearby store. She called the police and reported what had happened. They arrived quickly and searched the area, but the man had already fled. Cassandra was shaken but relieved that she had managed to escape with her life. However, she had lost the money she had saved for months to buy the car. She realized that she had been too trusting and vowed to be more careful in the future. My opinion. Many of these stories happened because of the victim's inattention and desire to earn money. For example, in one of the last stories, a young guy found a MacBook at half the market price. Anyone would know right away that there was something wrong, and he wanted to save money and ended up paying the price. Learn from other people's mistakes, or you have a chance to be in my next video. Thanks for watching. See you soon.
For months, I had been on the hunt for employment, a quest that began the moment I received my diploma in visual communications. The job market was tough, and the number of applicants was overwhelming. Despite sending out countless resumes, the response was disheartening. A few polite declines and a deafening silence were all I got. In a bid for any source of earnings, my attention was captured by a listing on JobFinder that read, "Visual communicator wanted for burgeoning digital enterprise. Work on your own schedule, competitive salary, prior experience not a prerequisite. Submit your portfolio and contact details to be considered." Seizing the chance, I responded immediately. With haste, I compiled a selection of my finest creations and dispatched it to the provided email. My hopes soared. Perhaps this was the turning point, the moment I'd secure a position that would embrace my artistic flair and technical prowess. The following day brought with it a wave of excitement. I had received a response. A gentleman by the name of Alex, the purported proprietor of the venture, expressed admiration for my work and extended an offer of employment. He invited me to his workspace for a discussion and a test assignment. He provided the location and the time, eagerly anticipating our meeting. Overjoyed, I could hardly fathom my good fortune. It all seemed too perfect, a role that mirrored my aspirations. I conveyed my gratitude to Alex and assured him of my attendance. I dedicated the remainder of the day to interview preparations. I delved into the enterprise, Creative Visions by Alex, a portal offering bespoke visual communication solutions to a diverse clientele, including brand identities, promotional materials, and web designs. The professionalism and caliber of the showcase projects were truly impressive. I selected an ensemble that struck a balance between professional and relaxed, and packed my essentials, laptop, notepad, and pen. I was determined to leave a lasting impression and demonstrate my readiness to contribute. At dawn, I embarked on my journey to the address Alex had given. It was situated in a quaint suburb of Springfield, Illinois, roughly an hour's commute from my residence. Consulting my phone's map, I noted the residential nature of the street, dotted with homes and apartment buildings. Stepping off the bus, I approached the designated location. It was a quaint bungalow with a neatly trimmed lawn and driveway. A placard by the entrance announced Creative Visions by Alex. I pressed the doorbell and awaited a response. Moments later, the door swung open, revealing a man in his prime, with neatly cropped auburn hair and a light beard. Clad in a polo shirt and trachis, his warm grin was welcoming. "Ah, you must be Emily. I'm Alex, the mind behind Creative Visions by Alex. Please come inside," he greeted, offering a handshake. I reciprocated the gesture and returned the smile. "Hello, Alex. It's a pleasure to meet you. I appreciate the invitation." He ushered me into his abode, a charming space brimming with books, periodicals, and assorted documents, and a prominent workstation housing a computer and printer occupied the main area. Family portraits adorned the walls, likely depicting his loved ones. "Apologies for the clutter. I operate from home, and tidying up often takes a back seat," he explained, securing the door. "This is my command center, where the magic happens. And today, it's where you'll be putting your talents to the test." He motioned towards a modest setup in the corner, a chair, and a laptop awaiting use. "I've prepared this workstation for you, equipped with all the necessary software and resources. It's here that you'll tackle the sample task I've assigned." Approaching the table, he handed me a file. Inside you'll find the project outline. It's for a patron desiring a logo for their fledgling patisserie. They're after a design that's understated yet sophisticated, one that encapsulates their brand and offerings. They've requested 3 color variations to select their favorite. You have a couple of hours to fulfill this brief and email me the results. Any inquiries? I glanced through the project details enclosed in the folder. It appeared clear-cut and manageable. I gave a nod and responded, "No, all seems clear. Many thanks." "Excellent. You can commence immediately." "I'll be engrossed in my tasks. Yet if you require assistance, don't hesitate to ask. I'm right over there," he indicated towards his workstation. He retreated to his desk and settled in, booting up his computer and commencing his work. I took my seat at the designated table and powered up the laptop. I entered the password provided by Alex and launched the design application. Revisiting the project brief, I began to conjure up concepts for the logo. A mix of eagerness and anxiety filled me. I was intent on delivering an impressive performance and earning Alex's approval. I aspired for this to be the beginning of a rewarding partnership. With focus, I immersed myself in the task, tuning out all distractions. Time slipped by unnoticed. The quietude of the room, the sound of the door, the echo of footsteps, the presence behind me, all escaped my awareness. But the cold seal against my neck snapped me to attention. A scream tore from my throat as I attempted to fend off my assailant, but I was caught off guard. Alex, the man I had trusted, had stealthily approached from behind and now pressed a knife to my skin. His demands clear. Panic surged as I fought his hold, but his strength was overpowering. Then the self-defense techniques I had learned sprang to mind. Channeling all my force, I delivered an elbow strike to his abdomen and reeled free from his clutches. Driven by adrenaline, I seized a hefty ornament and swung it at his face, landing a solid blow. Reeling from the impact, Alex clutched his injured nose, affording me a moment to dash for the exit. I sprinted into the open, heart racing, tears blending with the rush of terror and bewilderment. At last, I encountered a bystander and cried out for aid. They promptly contacted the emergency services and soon the police were on the scene. Shaking and overwhelmed, I narrated the harrowing event to the officers, who pledged to do all within their power to capture the perpetrator. An extensive investigation ensued, culminating in Alex's arrest and charges of attempted assault and abduction. It was revealed that he had ensnared others with the false promise of job opportunities, only to ambush them in a similar fashion. The thought of what might have occurred had I not resisted sent shivers down my spine. Though the ordeal left its scars, a sense of solace washed over me, knowing I had emerged safe and that justice would prevail. Supported by loved ones, I began the journey of recovery, resolved to remain vigilant. As for Alex, justice was served with a sentence that ensured his confinement, eliminating the threat he posed to the unsuspecting. It was a glimmer of light amidst the shadows, sealing off a chapter I was all too ready to close. In the serene village of Meadowbrook, cradled in the valleys of Vermont, a disturbing event unfolded that sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community. It was in the autumn of 2021 when Anna Thompson, a university student facing financial difficulties, decided to part with her vintage guitar. As the expenses mounted, she posted an ad on a local classifieds website, hoping it would catch the eye of an interested buyer. As the days passed, Anna's optimism waned. But then, on a foggy evening in mid-September, a ray of hope shone through as she received a message from a prospective buyer, Thomas Richards. Thomas conveyed his eagerness to acquire the guitar and proposed they meet to complete the sale. Despite a flicker of hesitation, Anna, driven by the urgency of her situation, consented to the rendezvous. On a crisp Saturday morning in 2021, Anna made her way to a quaint bookstore to meet with Thomas. She had a history of smooth online sales and expected this to be no different. Yet, upon her arrival, a sense of foreboding washed over her. Thomas was not alone. Two shadowy figures accompanied him, their intentions unclear. Anna's intuition screamed caution, but before she could act, Thomas made a sudden move towards her. Panic surged as she found herself in the midst of an assault. In the struggle that ensued, a loud bang pierced the air, a gunshot. The projectile struck Anna in the side, and she crumpled to the floor, struggling for breath. Unknown to Anna, an onlooker had observed the distressing episode and immediately alerted the authorities. Within moments, police and emergency medical teams converged on the scene. They discovered Anna fighting for survival amidst a crimson tide. The paramedics sprang into action, stabilizing her before whisking her away to the closest hospital. The news of Anna's ordeal spread like wildfire across Meadowbrook, leaving the populace in a state of disbelief and anger. The local law enforcement embarked on an exhaustive investigation, vowing to bring the culprits to justice. In the days that followed, detectives pieced together the sequence of events that led to Anna's grievous encounter. It became apparent that Thomas Richards was no stranger to the law, with a track record of criminal conduct linked to online dealings. It was clear that Anna had inadvertently walked into a malevolent scheme devised by a criminal ring. Persistence paid off for the authorities as they eventually apprehended Thomas and his two associates. The evidence against them was formidable, leading to charges not only for the attack on Anna, but also for a string of related fraudulent online activities. The trial that ensued was fraught with emotion. Anna's family and friends filled the courtroom, seeking solace and justice. The testimony presented painted a grim picture of the trio's ruthless exploits. The judge and jury were united in their revulsion at the sheer inhumanity displayed. Deliberation led to a decisive guilty verdict for all three defendants. Thomas Richards was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, and his accomplices received significant sentences for their roles in the crimes. Though the verdict brought a measure of comfort to Meadowbrook, the community grappled with a profound sense of loss and reflection on preventative measures. The incident served as a sobering reminder of the dangers inherent in online exchanges with strangers, igniting discussions on personal safety and the importance of vigilance during face-to-face transactions. Following the distressing event involving Anna, the village of Meadowbrook rallied together to enhance the safety of online dealings. In partnership with civic leaders, the local authorities instituted designated safe exchange points, supervised by law enforcement, to ensure secure face-to-face transactions. Overwhelmed by their sorrow, Anna's kin and companions directed their grief into activism. They founded a charitable organization in her honor, aimed at educating the public on the perils of online marketplaces and providing aid to those affected by similar offenses. The ordeal left a lasting impression on the residents of Meadowbrook, serving as a poignant reminder of the precariousness of life and the importance of caution in a digitally connected society. Anna's legacy lived on in the memories of those who knew her, and the insights from her unfortunate experience became a guiding light of prudence and fortitude for the coming generations. For some time, I had been on the lookout for a replacement for my damaged and sluggish phone. With a limited budget, I turned to Dell Spotter for affordable options. There, I stumbled upon an advertisement for an iPhone XR at a mere $250, a deal that seemed almost unreal. Driven by curiosity, I messaged the contact to inquire about its availability. The response was prompt. The seller confirmed its availability. He explained that it was a gift for his partner. But following their separation, the phone was left unwanted. His aim was simply to part with it swiftly. His tone was sincere and amiable, prompting me to arrange a meeting at a local cafe the following afternoon. With a blend of excitement and apprehension, I made my way to the cafe. I was hopeful for a legitimate transaction and a phone in prime condition. Despite being aware of deal spotter scams, I also knew of many successful deals. The potential savings seemed to justify the risk. Upon arrival, I scanned the cafe for the seller, who had described himself as a tall, dark-haired individual in a green jacket. I noticed him seated, a phone in hand, and he greeted me with a wave and a friendly smile. Approaching him, I introduced myself. "Hello, I'm Samantha. You're selling the iPhone, correct?" He rose to greet me, his stature more imposing than anticipated, with a robust frame, striking green eyes, and a disarming smile. He didn't fit the profile of a con artist. "Hey, Samantha. I'm Michael. Pleasure to meet you. Here's the phone. It's as good as new. Feel free to examine it." He passed me the phone, which appeared immaculate and operational. It powered on without issue, was unlocked, and devoid of any security codes. A quick look through the apps and settings confirmed its excellent state. I was both impressed and elated. "This is fantastic. It's just what I've been searching for. How would you like payment?" "A cash transaction would be ideal." "Do you have it on you?" He inquired casually. I nodded, retrieving the $250 I had withdrawn earlier, neatly packed in an envelope. As I reached for the envelope, I noticed a shift in Michael's demeanor. His once warm smile turned chilling. He surveyed the surroundings before leaning in with a menacing whisper. "I must apologize, Samantha, but I'm going to need all your cash. Not just the $250, but every cent you have. Your purse, car keys, and let's keep this quiet, or things could get unpleasant. Understand?" A wave of shock and fear washed over me as I realized the trap I had walked into. This was no ordinary seller. He was a thief using a counterfeit phone and story as bait. The man before me was a criminal, and I was his target. Attempting to maintain composure, I replied, "I'm sorry, what are you implying? This has to be some sort of prank, right?" He shook his head, his voice stern. "This is no joke. It's a serious matter. Comply, or you'll regret it. I have a weapon, and I won't hesitate. Hand over your money, purse, keys, and phone." Immediately. He made a grab for the envelope in my grasp, but I jerked it away. Fear mingled with indignation within me. The money was the fruit of my labor, and I wasn't about to surrender it without a struggle. I resolved to stand my ground. "I declare no, I refuse. This money is mine, and you have no right to it. You're nothing but fraud and a crook, and I won't let you succeed. Help? I need help. This man is attempting to rob me." My voice soared in a desperate plea, cutting through the air, a call for assistance and intervention. I yearned for someone to heed my cries, for a savior to intervene. I wished for the assailant, whom I knew as Michael, to be daunted and flee. Above all, I wished for safety, but my hopes were dashed. Michael seized me by the locks and yanked me close. A blade pressed against my skin as he hissed, "Silence, you fool. You've just sealed your fate." A searing agony erupted in my skull, and the world faded to blackness. Regaining consciousness, I found myself in the sterile confines of a hospital, the scent of disinfectant in the air, and the rhythmic beeping of monitors in the background. A dull pain throbbed in my head, leaving me bewildered. A nurse, noting my return to consciousness, approached with urgency. "You're awake. How do you feel?" she inquired, her voice a blend of worry and solace. My mind scrambled to piece together the events. What transpired? I rasped. "You were assaulted," she informed me softly. "You were discovered unconscious near the cafe where your meeting was arranged. You've been here for several hours. Do any memories linger?" Memories of the ordeal trickled back, the deceptive advertisement, the encounter with the supposed seller, the abrupt escalation to hostility, and the subsequent blow that rendered me unconscious. I recall, I murmured, emotions swelling within me. The nurse's hand rested reassuringly on my shoulder. "Fear not. You are in a safe place. The authorities are conducting an investigation, and the culprit has been apprehended. He will face the consequences of his actions." A wave of relief surged through me, coupled with appreciation for the prompt response of the police. Despite the trauma, a spark of hope ignited within me, knowing that the individual responsible for my terror would be brought to justice. As I lay there, enveloped in the care of the hospital staff, I made a silent vow to regain my sense of security and fortitude. The experience had left its mark, but I refused to be governed by fear. With each passing moment, I felt my resolve strengthen, ready to step out of the shadows and into the lights, fortified and resolute. In 2017 in Portland, Oregon, a young lady named Rebecca found herself in search of a new companion. Having recently relocated from a small Idahoan town, she found herself longing for companionship in the midst of her bustling life in the city. By day, she served as a waitress in a local diner, but during her off hours, she felt a palpable sense of loneliness. Determined to fill this void, she set her sights on acquiring a puppy, hoping it would inject some joy and vibrancy into her days. Despite scouring the internet for local breeders and shelters, Rebecca struggled to find the perfect pup that met her criteria. Small, fluffy, and sociable enough to fit seamlessly into her apartment life. Dreaming of a poodle or a Maltese, she was disheartened to find that such breeds often came with a hefty price tag, far beyond her budget. Undeterred, she turned to Craigslist, hoping to find a generous soul offering their puppies at an affordable rate. After scrolling through numerous listings, she stumbled upon an ad that caught her attention. Lovely poodle Maltese cross puppies available for purchase. Just $100 each. Ready for their new homes. Contact me via call or text at this number if interested. The ad featured several snapshots of adorable white puppies with curly coats and soulful eyes, tugging at Rebecca's heartstrings. Without hesitation, she reached out to the seller via text. "Hello, I came across your ad on Craigslist. Are the puppies still available?" she inquired eagerly. Moments later, a reply came through. "Indeed, they are still available. I have 2 males and 1 female remaining. Which one would you like?" Rebecca's heart leaped with excitement. "I would love to have the female. She's absolutely adorable. Wonderful choice. She's yours. Where would you like to meet?" The seller responded promptly. Rebecca pondered for a moment, weighing the options. She was hesitant to invite a stranger to her apartment, yet she also wanted to ensure her safety. Opting for a compromise, she suggested a public meeting spot. "What about Starbucks on 5th Avenue? It's conveniently located for me." "That works for me. What time shall we meet?" Rebecca glanced at her watch. It was 3 p.m. on a Saturday, her day off. "I can be there in an hour. Is that acceptable?" Perfect. See you then. With the conversation concluded, Rebecca felt a surge of anticipation. Today was the day she would welcome a new furry friend into her life. Hastily, she gathered her belongings and headed out, stopping at an ATM to withdraw $100 before making her way to Starbucks. Arriving promptly at 4 p.m., Rebecca scanned the coffee shop, searching for the tall, blond man described by the seller. However, she found no one matching the description. Undeterred, she decided to wait inside, ordering a latte to pass the time. As she paid for her drink, a tap on her shoulder startled her. "Excuse me, are you Rebecca?" As Rachel turned, she was met with a man who didn't fit the description she expected. Short and dark-haired, he introduced himself as Mike, here for the puppy exchange. Rachel's caution spiked as she realized the discrepancy. "You're not who I spoke with," she pointed out. Mike offered a strained smile, explaining his brother's absence and presenting the puppy in a box. Rachel's relief surged as she saw the familiar furry face. Grateful, she cradled the puppy close, feeling its warmth and liveliness. With an offer to move elsewhere to avoid disturbing others, Rachel's unease grew. She remembered the cash in her purse and agreed to leave. But as they turned a corner, shadows loomed, and before Rachel could react, she was attacked. Struggling against the assailant's brutal assault, she was left battered and unconscious. Days later, Rachel woke in a hospital room, her body broken but spirit resilient. Learning the grim truth about her attacker's modus operandi, she understood the peril she had narrowly escaped. Grateful for survival, she embraced her new life with Snowflake, a constant reminder of both pain endured and love found. Reflecting on her ordeal, Rachel resolved to remain vigilant, knowing the importance of awareness and caution in a world fraught with dangers. She learned to navigate life's challenges with newfound strength, embracing each day with hope and resilience, cherishing the love and joy her furry companion brought into her life. As for the commentary, it's prudent to acknowledge the importance of situational awareness and taking precautions in unfamiliar situations. Rachel's experience serves as a reminder to stay alert and prioritize personal safety, whether it's meeting someone from online platforms or navigating daily life. By staying vigilant and prepared, individuals can mitigate risks and safeguard themselves against potential threats. Once upon a chilling autumn evening in a sleepy town in rural America, a young woman named Emily found herself alone in her small, dimly lit apartment. The wind outside howled like a vengeful spirit, and the rain tapped at her window like the gnarled fingers of a ghost trying to find its way inside. Emily, a recent college graduate, had moved to this town for a fresh start, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Little did she know, her quest for solitude would lead her down a path of terror and despair that would forever haunt her. Emily had come across a job listing on Craigslist earlier that day. It was for a part-time position as a librarian at the town's historical society, a quaint and charming building nestled at the heart of the community. The ad, posted by someone named Mr. Holloway, had piqued her interest. It offered an impressive salary for what seemed like a simple job. With her student loans looming over her, Emily decided to give it a shot. When she arrived at the Historical Society the next day, Emily was greeted by a gloomy, old building. Ivy crawled up its weathered walls, and the windows were streaked with grime. She hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest, but then she pushed open the creaking door. A bell above it tinkled, announcing her presence. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the dim lighting cast long, eerie shadows across the rows of ancient books and artifacts. A tall, slender man with a sharp face and piercing eyes stood behind the counter. He introduced himself as Mr. Holloway, the curator of the Historical Society. "Welcome, Emily," he said, extending a bony hand. "I'm pleased to have you here. The job is quite straightforward. Cataloging and organizing our collection, assisting visitors, and locking up at night. But there is one rule you must follow diligently. Emily listened intently, curious about what the rule might be. Never, under any circumstances, Mr. Holloway continued, his voice lowering to a whisper, enter the basement. It's off limits, and I must insist that you respect that boundary. Emily nodded, her curiosity piqued even further. The mysterious basement, off limits and forbidden, filled her with a sense of unease. As the weeks went by, Emily settled into her new role. She meticulously catalogued the collection and greeted the occasional visitor who wandered into the historical society. Yet, her curiosity about the basement gnawed at her. Late at night, when the building was silent, she could hear faint, eerie sounds echoing from below. One evening, as the rain poured outside and the wind howled like a choir of lost souls, Emily's curiosity got the best of her. She decided to explore the forbidden basement, convinced that Mr. Holloway's warning was merely a tactic to keep her away from something valuable or intriguing. She slipped down the creaking stairs, the dim light from above fading away as she descended into the inky darkness below. The air grew colder, and the faint echoes became more pronounced, like distant whispers. In the basement, Emily found a room filled with old, dusty books and relics. But what drew her attention was a heavy, ornate wooden door at the far end. It was adorned with strange symbols and seemed ancient, as if it held secrets from centuries past. Unable to resist, she approached the door and tried to turn the handle. To her surprise, the door swung open with ease, revealing a hidden chamber bathed in an eerie, greenish glow. Inside, rows of tall, glass jars lined the shelves, each containing a grotesque, deformed creature suspended in a strange, glowing liquid. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the truth. These were not creatures of nature. They were abominations created by some twisted mind. Panic set in as she stumbled backward, knocking over one of the jars. The glass shattered, and the vile liquid spilled onto the floor. A guttural growl echoed through the chamber, and Emily turned to see a shadowy figure emerging from the darkness. It was Mr. Holloway, his eyes now burning with a malevolent light. "You shouldn't have come here, Emily," he hissed, his voice now dripping with malice. Emily stumbled backward, her mind racing as she realized the true horror of the situation. Mr. Holloway was not a curator, but a mad scientist conducting unholy experiments in the dark depths of the basement. Desperation overtook her, and she bolted toward the stairs, racing to escape the nightmare that had unfolded before her. But Mr. Holloway was close behind, his inhuman speed and strength quickly closing the gap. As she reached the top of the stairs, Emily threw open the door and burst out into the rainy night. She ran through the streets, terror driving her forward, not daring to look back. 111. For days, Emily lived in fear, constantly looking over her shoulder, convinced that Mr. Holloway would find her and exact his revenge. She couldn't trust anyone in the town, not knowing who might be complicit in his sinister experiments. Eventually, Emily gathered enough evidence to expose Mr. Holloway's horrific deeds to the authorities. When they raided the Historical Society, they found the basement chamber empty, the jars shattered, and Mr. Holloway gone without a trace. To this day, Emily lives in constant fear, haunted by the memory of the grotesque creatures she saw in the basement and the knowledge that Mr. Holloway might still be out there, conducting his twisted experiments in the shadows. She can never escape the chilling truth that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places, and the horrors of that fateful night on Craigslist continue to haunt her. A dark chapter in a tale of terror she could never forget. 111. It was a gloomy evening in the quiet town of Willowbrook, nestled deep within the heart of the American Midwest. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the sleepy streets. Most residents were cosily nestled in their homes, blissfully unaware of the sinister presence that lurked among them. At the edge of town stood a dilapidated Victorian mansion, its once grand architecture now a faded memory of opulence. Locals referred to it as 1313 Blackwood Avenue, a name that sent shivers down their spines. The house had been abandoned for as long as anyone could remember, and tales of its dark past were whispered among the townsfolk. Some said it was cursed, while others believed it was haunted. One fateful evening, as the town was enveloped in an eerie silence, an unusual listing appeared on the popular online marketplace, Craigslist. The listing was titled Historic Victorian Mansion, 1313 Blackwood Avenue, and was posted by a user with the enigmatic pseudonym, The Dollmaker. The ad promised a remarkable deal. The mansion, a sprawling 10-bedroom, 5-bathroom property, was listed at a price that seemed too good to be true. Must sell quickly, the listing declared, serious inquiries only. The Dollmaker provided a contact number and an email address, but offered no photos of the interior. Curiosity piqued, locals couldn't resist the allure of such an incredible bargain. The tale of the mansion's dark history did little to deter potential buyers. Instead, it only fueled their desire for a paranormal thrill or an incredible investment opportunity. Within days, interested buyers began to contact the dealmaker. Among them was Sarah, a young real estate agent eager to make her mark in the industry. She had heard whispers about the mansion, but saw the listing as a chance to prove herself. With trembling fingers, she dialed the mysterious number and arranged a viewing. Sarah arrived at 1313 Blackwood Avenue on a cloudy Saturday morning. The mansion loomed ominously before her, shrouded in fog. The dealmaker, a shadowy figure in a black coat and fedora, greeted her at the front gate. "Welcome, Sarah," he said in a low, raspy voice. "I trust you're prepared to make a deal." As they stepped into the mansion, the air grew colder and the atmosphere shifted. Sarah noticed strange paintings hanging on the walls, portraits of people with hollow eyes, each one eerily lifelike. The dealmaker led her through dimly lit corridors, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The tour took an unsettling turn when they entered the basement. The dealmaker revealed a hidden chamber, its walls adorned with disturbing symbols. Sarah's heart raced as she stumbled upon a pentagram etched into the floor. Dread washed over her. The dealmaker began to unravel the mansion's gruesome history. He spoke of a wealthy family that had once owned the property, the Blackwoods. They were known for their lavish parties and eccentric rituals that drew the attention of the town. Whispers of dark sacrifices and unholy ceremonies spread like wildfire. One night, a fire had engulfed the mansion, leaving no survivors. The townspeople believed it to be a divine punishment for the family's wicked ways. The mansion was abandoned, left to decay over the years. Sarah couldn't help but wonder why the dealmaker was so eager to sell a property with such a sinister past. She decided to dig deeper, uncovering the truth behind his true identity and motives. Late one night, Sarah ventured back to 1313 Blackwood Avenue, determined to uncover the dealmaker's secret. Armed with a flashlight, she began to search the mansion for any hidden clues. She discovered a locked room on the 3rd floor, its door adorned with an intricate, ancient-looking lock. With trembling hands, she managed to pick it open. Inside, she found a room filled with dusty old books, manuscripts, and journals, all detailing the Blackwood family's occult practices. As she delved deeper into the journals, Sarah uncovered a startling revelation. The dealmaker was not an ordinary man, but a malevolent entity bound to the mansion by curse. The Blackwood family had made a pact with dark forces, trading their souls for wealth and power. In return, they were cursed to forever serve as agents of evil, luring unsuspecting victims into the mansion's web. Sarah's discovery sent shivers down her spine. She realized that she had walked right into the clutches of a malevolent force. The mansion's hauntings escalated. Sarah heard whispered voices in empty rooms, saw shadowy figures lurking in the corners of her vision, and experienced terrifying nightmares that felt all too real. Desperate to escape the mansion's grip, she began researching ancient rituals to banish the malevolent spirit. 11. Weeks turned into months as Sarah delved deeper into the occult, determined to confront the entity. She discovered a ritual that required her to gather rare ingredients and perform a cleansing ceremony within the mansion's unholy chamber. As the appointed night arrived, Sarah entered the chamber, her heart pounding. The dealmaker, now fully possessed by the malevolent spirit, confronted her. The room filled with an otherworldly presence, and the walls seemed to pulse with dark energy. Sarah recited the incantation, her voice trembling but resolute. The chamber erupted in chaos as the entity fought to maintain its hold. The ritual reached its climax, and blinding light engulfed the room. Sarah felt a surge of power coursing through her as the spirit's presence weakened. With a final burst of energy, she banished the malevolent spirit from the mansion. The dealmaker's form crumbled into dust, leaving behind only the fedora that had once adorned its head. The mansion itself seemed to sigh in relief, its dark history finally put to rest. With the curse lifted, 1313 Blackwood Avenue slowly began to crumble into ruins, its dark past fading into legend. Sarah, now forever marked by her ordeal, vowed to ensure that the mansion's tale lived on as a warning to those who sought to make deals with the supernatural. As the years passed, the memory of 1313 Blackwood Avenue became a chilling cautionary tale, a testament to the darkness that could lurk behind the facade of an ordinary Craigslist listing. The mansion and its malevolent spirit may have been banished, but the legend would live on, ensuring that the horrors of that fateful deal would never be forgotten. It all started in a rather peculiar manner, leading me to initially think it was some kind of prank or a belated April Fool's joke pulled by one of my friends. However, events would take a dark and unsettling turn. I found myself seated at my computer desk, gazing at the monitor emitting a bright blue glow. It was an ordinary evening, and I was casually browsing through classified ads on a website similar to Craigslist, as was my routine when searching for interesting or profitable opportunities. The time had come to wrap up my computer tasks and unwind, but fate had something extraordinary in store. After a few minutes of procrastination, I made up my mind to finish my work and shut down the computer. Just before doing so, my eyes were drawn to a peculiar ad. The photo in the ad was surreal and almost unbelievable, taking me a moment to grasp its meaning. The images displayed my own room, furnished with my personal belongings. What was even more unsettling was that the ad contained my full name, at a listed price of $1,500. Initially, I brushed it off as an elaborate prank, but as I delved further into the ad's contents, it became apparent that this was no joking matter. The ad included photos taken from my social media accounts, selfies with friends, beach pictures with my supposed girlfriend, and even images of my personal possessions. It was an invasion of my privacy that sent shivers down my spine. The most disturbing part, however, lay at the end of the ad, where I read the chilling words, "May be grabbed by 2 to 3 people. Bringing a weapon is recommended but not necessary." It sounded like a menacing threat, crushing my hopes that this might be a mere jest. How many people had seen this ad, and who would even respond to such a bizarre offer? A dreadful realization struck me. The ad contained my exact address. The possibility was undeniable, given the abundance of personal details in the ad. I frantically returned to the listing and saw the line. Address, $1,500. It was grotesque and sinister. Someone was attempting to profit from my personal information. My mind raced, contemplating how many other ads like this might exist. How many unsuspecting individuals have fallen into this sinister trap? Faced with this nightmarish situation, I urgently reported the ad, hoping it would be removed. However, I knew that it might take a considerable amount of time for the site moderators to address my request, and I couldn't afford to wait. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I sought a way to contact Craigslist support directly, but I came up empty-handed, finding only a feedback form. My hopes were dwindling. Desperation led me to check my email, where I noticed a glimmer of hope. I hastily crafted a message to the seller using a random email address, pleading for the removal of the listing, offering 5 times the listed price if necessary. I waited a response with bated breath. As minutes stretched into agonizing hours, I scurried around my house, securing doors and windows, and dimming the lights to create the illusion of an empty home. The chances of some malevolent stranger stumbling upon my location were slim, given the vastness of the internet. Nevertheless, I was determined to reduce the risk to absolute zero. Just when hope teetered on the brink of extinction, my nerves reached their limit, and a notification chimed in, signaling a new message in my inbox. My heart plummeted as I read the ominous words. Information has already been sold. The message was unequivocal, and I sank in my chair, my last glimmer of hope extinguished. How much time had elapsed since the sale? Was it a matter of minutes, an hour, or perhaps a day? My thoughts were abruptly interrupted by the sound of wheels crunching on gravel. I cautiously peered through the curtains and spotted a sleek black SUV, its occupants concealed behind tinted windows. I struggled to convince myself that they would simply turn and depart, but my fear remained unrelenting. However, the vehicle remained stationary, its doors swinging open in unison. 2 enigmatic figures garbed in black emerged. My initial impulse was to flee, but an overpowering sense of dread held me in place. I watched in paralyzed silence as they approached the front door and rapped loudly, their sinister intentions unmistakable. My plan took shape rapidly. I decided to dial 911, chastising myself for not doing so earlier. The front door was sturdy, and it would take them some time to breach it, providing me with a precious window of opportunity. However, just as I initiated the call, I heard a peculiar, ominous sound emanating from the other side of the door, the keypad being tampered with. My heart plummeted as I realized that they likely knew the door code, information I had unwittingly provided. Panic surged through me, and I desperately sought a hiding spot. As the door unlocked with a click, I stealthily slipped into the pantry, the lights flickering to life. The 2 men entered the kitchen, whispering as they scoured the room intently. I almost reached the back door, but clumsily collided with a table, cursing my own ineptitude. Their hushed conversation ceased abruptly, and they commenced a thorough search of the kitchen, attempting to discern my whereabouts. I retreated into the pantry as the lights blazed on. The men, undeterred by the noise, infiltrated the kitchen, continuing their relentless quest. I could discern their footsteps drawing closer, and my heart raced in my chest. While they located the pantry, they found it empty as I had cleverly slipped out through the back door. My escape strategy involved vanishing into the dense woods. I recognized that the internet was a vast expanse, and the likelihood of someone stumbling upon this enigmatic ad was infinitesimal. Still, I was determined to eliminate even that remote possibility. Just when hope seemed to dwindle, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I retrieved it, and the call displayed Lexi's name, my girlfriend. My eyes widened. Lexi could return home at any moment. What if they had decided to capture her instead of me? I answered the call, my voice trembling as I cautioned her not to come home, explaining that something was terribly amiss. She inquired about my whereabouts, her voice laced with terror. I informed her that I was hidden in the pantry, hoping it was a safe haven for the time being. But before I could convey more information, the call abruptly terminated. Despair coursed through me as I wondered if they had found Lexi. Had I failed to forewarn her in time? Then an unfamiliar, disconcerting, vibrating sound emanated from the neighboring room. One of the men innocuously retrieved the phone, their voice distorted and gruff. At that moment, a dreadful realization dawned on me. The person who had posted the ad wasn't stalking me. They were living alongside me. Lexi herself might have posted that malicious ad, inadvertently divulging my location to these malevolent individuals. My heart constricted with despair as I listened to their conversation. They discussed the situation, and it became apparent that Lexi had indeed informed them of my whereabouts. The realization that she might have betrayed me added a layer of anguish to my already harrowing predicament. As I contemplated the gravity of the situation, my desperate eyes caught a subtle movement from the girl sitting at the table across the room. Thin and fragile, she appeared to be barely out of her teens, her vacant eyes fixed on a plate of artificial food. I was moved by an overwhelming sense of pity for her. Attempting to communicate with her, I whispered, "Can you hear me?" Her response, if any, was subtle, but it was evident that she was trying to convey something. I focused intently on her, and she managed to drop a steak knife, which clattered a few feet away from me. A glimmer of hope ignited within me. I strained against my restraints, attempting to reach the fallen knife. It was a race against time, and my hand inched closer to the knife with each desperate effort. The men soon noticed my intentions and attempted to thwart my endeavor, but it was too late. I seized the knife and thrust it into the nearest assailant's stomach, a surge of warmth washing over me as he loosened his grip. I stumbled back, adrenaline coursing through my veins, and made a run for it, darting out the door and onto the veranda. My heart pounded as I sprinted, casting a fearful glance toward the car where the guardian stood. Our eyes locked briefly, confusion giving way to fury. He brandished a silver pistol, aiming it at me. I evaded the bullet just in time, a deafening gunshot echoing in my ears. I sprinted around a corner, with 2 more gunshots resounding behind me. I knew that my only hope of escape lay in reaching the nearby river. The water was bone-chilling cold as I plunged in, my body carried away by the current. I glimpsed the guardian pursuing me, gun in hand and rage in his eyes. Unable to bear his menacing gaze, I turned away just as I collided with a massive rock jutting from the water. Pain surged through my head, and the world darkened as I succumbed to unconsciousness. The subsequent events are a hazy, fragmented blur. According to the nurse, I was discovered under a bridge by Good Samaritans who rushed me to the hospital. I cooperated fully with the police, recounting every detail, but the house's location remained elusive. The river had several tributaries, making it impossible to determine the exact spot I had entered or how long I had swum. While I was relieved to have escaped, the knowledge that Lexi, if that was even her real name, continued to sell personal information haunted me. The girl who had saved me remained captive in that house, and somewhere out there, the Guardian was hunting for his next acquisition. I had been looking for a job for months, ever since I graduated from college with a degree in graphic design. The economy was in a slump, and the competition was fierce. I had sent out dozens of resumes, but I had only received a few rejections, and mostly silence. I was desperate for any kind of income, so when I saw an ad on Craigslist that said graphic designer needed for a small online business, flexible hours, good pay, no experience required. Email your portfolio and contact info to apply. I jumped at the opportunity. I quickly put together a portfolio of some of my best work and emailed it to the address given in the ad. I hoped that this would be my lucky break, that I would finally land a job that would allow me to use my skills and creativity. To my delight, I received a reply the next day. It was from a man named Mark, who claimed to be the owner of the online business. He said he was impressed by my portfolio and wanted to hire me. He asked me to come to his office for an interview and a trial project. He gave me the address and the time and said he was looking forward to meeting me. I was ecstatic. I couldn't believe that I had found a job so easily, and that it seemed to be exactly what I was looking for. I replied to Mark, thanking him for the opportunity and confirming that I would be there. I spent the rest of the day preparing for the interview. I researched the online business, which was called Designs by Mark. It was a website that offered custom graphic design services for various clients, such as logos, flyers, posters, and websites. It looked professional and legitimate, and I was impressed by the quality of the work displayed on the site. I also picked out an outfit that was smart but casual and packed a bag with my laptop, a notebook, and a pen. I wanted to make a good impression and show that I was ready to work. The next morning, I got up early and took a bus to the address that Mark had given me. It was in a suburban area of Lima, Ohio, about an hour away from where I lived. I checked the map on my phone and saw that it was a residential street with a mix of houses and apartments. I got off the bus and walked to the address. It was a 2-story house with a small front yard and a garage. There was a sign on the door that said Designs by Mark. I rang the doorbell and waited. A few seconds later, the door opened and a man greeted me. He was in his mid-30s with short brown hair and a stubbly beard. He was wearing a t-shirt and jeans and had a friendly smile. "Hi, you must be Jessica. I'm Mark, the owner of Designs by Mark." Come in," he said, extending his hand. I shook his hand and smiled back. "Hi, Mark. It's nice to meet you. Thank you for inviting me." He led me inside the house, which was cozy and cluttered. There were books, magazines, and papers everywhere, and a large desk with a computer and a printer in the living room. There were also several framed pictures of Mark with a woman and a child, presumably his wife and son. "Sorry for the mess. I work from home, and I don't have much time to clean up," he said as he closed the door behind us. "This is my office, where I do all my work, and this is where you'll be working today." He gestured to a small table with a chair and a laptop in the corner of the room. "I've set up a laptop for you with all the software and tools you'll need. You can use it to work on the trial project I have for you." He walked over to the table and handed me a folder. "This is the project brief. It's for a client who wants a logo for their new bakery. They want something simple, elegant, and catchy that reflects their name and their products. They also want it in 3 different colors, so they can choose the one they like best. You have 2 hours to complete the project and send it to me by email. Do you have any questions?" I opened the folder and looked at the brief. It seemed straightforward and doable. I nodded and said, "No, I think I understand." "Thank you." "Great. Then you can start right away. I'll be working on my own projects. But if you need anything, just let me know. I'll be right here," he said, pointing to his desk. He walked back to his desk and sat down. He turned on his computer and started typing. I sat down at the table and opened the laptop. I logged in with the password that Mark had given me and opened the software. I looked at the brief again and started brainstorming ideas for the logo. I was excited and nervous. I wanted to do a good job and impress Mark. I hoped that this would be the start of a long and fruitful collaboration. I focused on the task and tried to ignore everything else. I didn't notice the time passing by. I didn't notice the silence in the room. I didn't notice the door opening and closing. I didn't notice the footsteps behind me. I didn't notice the hand on my shoulder. I did notice the knife on my throat. I screamed and tried to push the attacker away, but it was too late. The man, Mark, had caught me off guard. He had snuck up behind me and held a knife to my throat, threatening me to comply with his demands. My heart raced as I struggled against his grip, but he was stronger. In a panic, I remembered the self-defense classes I had taken in college. With all my strength, I elbowed him in the stomach and twisted out of his grasp. Adrenaline coursing through my veins, I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy paperweight, and swung it at him, hitting him square in the face. Mark stumbled backward, clutching his bleeding nose, giving me just enough time to bolt towards the door. Without looking back, I raced out into the street, my heart pounding in my chest. Tears streamed down my face as I ran, my mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. Finally, I spotted a passerby and screamed for help. They quickly dialed emergency services, and within minutes, the police arrived on the scene. Trembling and in shock, I recounted the terrifying ordeal to the officers, who assured me that they would do everything in their power to apprehend the attacker. After a thorough investigation, Mark was arrested and charged with attempted assault and kidnapping. It turned out that he had lured other unsuspecting victims to his house under the guise of job interviews, only to attack them in a similar manner. I shuddered at the thought of what could have happened if I hadn't fought back. Despite the trauma of the experience, I felt a sense of relief knowing that I had escaped unharmed and that justice would be served. With the support of my friends and family, I slowly began to heal from the ordeal, and I vowed never to let my guard down again. As for Mark, he was eventually convicted and sentenced to prison, where he would no longer pose a threat to innocent people. It was a small victory in the face of darkness, but it brought closure to a chapter of my life that I was eager to leave behind. I had been looking for a motorcycle for a long time. I wanted something fast, sleek, and affordable. I browsed through various websites and apps, but nothing caught my eye, until I saw it. It was a 2013 Honda CBR 600RR, black and red, with low mileage and a clean title. It looked like a dream, and the price was unbelievable. Only $5,000. I couldn't believe my luck. I quickly clicked on the ad and sent a message to the seller. "Hi, I'm interested in your bike. Is it still available?" I waited anxiously for a reply. A few minutes later, I got a notification. "Yes, it is. Are you serious about buying it?" I typed back as fast as I could. "Yes, I am. Where are you located? Can I come and see it today?" The seller responded almost immediately. "I'm in San Jose. Sure, you can come today. How about 4 p.m.? I checked the time. It was 2:30 p.m. I had enough time to drive there from San Francisco, where I lived. I agreed to the time and asked for the address. "Oh, great. It's 123 Main Street, San Jose. See you soon." I grabbed my keys, wallet, and phone and headed to my car. I was so excited. I had a feeling this was the one. I had always wanted a motorcycle, ever since I was a kid. I loved the thrill, the freedom, the speed. I couldn't wait to get on the road. I drove for about an hour, following the GPS directions. I arrived at the address around 3:45 p.m. It was a quiet residential street with modest houses and well-kept lawns. I parked in front of the house that matched the number. I looked around, but I didn't see any sign of the bike or the seller. I texted the seller. "Hey, I'm here. Where are you?" I waited for a reply, but none came. I checked the ad again to make sure I had the right address. It was the same. I decided to call the seller. Maybe he was busy or didn't hear my text. I dialed the number, but it went straight to voicemail. "Hi, this is John. I'm sorry, I can't take your call right now. Please leave a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible." I hung up and tried again, but the same thing happened. I started to feel uneasy. Something was wrong. Maybe it was a scam. Maybe the bike didn't exist. Maybe the seller was trying to rip me off. I decided to get out of there. I didn't want to waste any more time. I got back in my car and started the engine. As I was about to drive away, I heard a loud bang. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I looked down and saw blood. I had been shot. I gasped for air, but I couldn't breathe. I felt dizzy and weak. I saw two men running towards me, wearing masks and holding guns. They opened the door and dragged me out of the car. They threw me on the ground and kicked me. "Where's the money, you idiot? Where's the money?" one of them shouted. I tried to speak, but I couldn't. I felt blood filling my mouth. I saw them searching my pockets, taking my wallet and phone. They laughed and high-fived each other. "Nice job, bro. We got him good. Let's get out of here before the cops show up." They ran back to their car, a black SUV, and sped away. I lay there on the pavement, bleeding and dying. I couldn't believe what had happened. I had been lured into a trap by a fake ad, by a fake seller, by a fake bike. I had been robbed and killed for nothing. I thought of my family, my friends, my life. I had so much to live for. I had so many dreams. I wanted to travel, to see the world, to have fun. I wanted to ride a motorcycle, to feel the wind, to be free. But now, it was all over. I was never going to do any of those things. I was never going to see anyone again. I closed my eyes and waited for the end. Suddenly, amidst the haze of pain and despair, I heard distant sirens growing louder and closer. Hope flickered within me as I struggled to hold on. Moments later, a pair of headlights illuminated the scene, followed by the urgent voices of paramedics rushing to my side. "Stay with us, buddy. You're going to be all right," one of them reassured me as they swiftly assessed my injuries and stabilized me. I faded in and out of consciousness as they worked to save my life. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed, surrounded by beeping monitors and the sterile smell of antiseptic. My chest ached, but I was alive. Over the following days, I learned that the police had launched a thorough investigation into the incident. However, despite their efforts, the perpetrators behind the fake ad and the brutal attack remained elusive. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. As I recuperated in the hospital, I reflected on the ordeal I had endured. Though shaken and scarred, I refused to let fear and bitterness consume me. Instead, I resolved to cherish each moment and pursue my dreams with even greater determination. Though the road ahead might be daunting, I was grateful for the second chance at life. And as I gazed out of the hospital window, I knew that someday, somehow, I would find the courage to ride again. I had been looking for a new phone for a while, since my old one was cracked and slow. I didn't have much money to spare, so I decided to check out Craigslist for some cheap deals. I saw an ad for a Samsung Galaxy S10 for only $200, which seemed too good to be true. But I was curious, so I texted the number and asked if it was still available. The seller replied quickly and said yes, it was. He said he had bought it for his girlfriend, but she broke up with him and left the phone behind. He said he just wanted to get rid of it and move on. He sounded genuine and friendly, so I agreed to meet him at a nearby Starbucks the next day. I was excited and nervous as I drove to the meeting place. I hoped the phone was in good condition and that the seller was honest. I had heard some horror stories about Craigslist scams, but I also knew many people who had successful transactions. I figured it was worth the risk for such a bargain. I parked my car and walked to the Starbucks. I looked around for the seller, who had described himself as a tall, blond guy wearing a blue shirt. I spotted him sitting at a corner table, holding a phone in his hand. He waved at me and smiled. I walked over to him and introduced myself. "Hi, I'm Jessica. You're the one selling the phone, right?" He nodded and stood up. He was taller than I expected and had a muscular build. He had piercing blue eyes and a charming smile. He looked like a model, not a scammer. "Hi, Jessica. I'm Ryan. Nice to meet you. Here's the phone. It's in perfect condition. You can check it out if you want." He handed me the phone, and I took it. It looked new and shiny, with no scratches or dents. I turned it on and saw that it was unlocked and had no password. I browsed through the apps and settings, and everything seemed fine. I was impressed and happy. "Wow, this is amazing. It's exactly what I wanted. Thank you so much. How do you want me to pay you?" He shrugged and said, "Cash is fine. Do you have it with you?" I nodded and reached for my purse. I had withdrawn $200 from the ATM earlier and had it in an envelope. I opened my purse and took out the envelope. As I did, I noticed that Ryan's smile changed. It became colder and more sinister. He glanced around and then leaned closer to me. "Listen, Jessica. I'm sorry to do this, but I need you to give me all your money. Not just the $200, but everything you have. And your purse too. And your car keys. And don't make a scene, or I'll hurt you. Do you understand?" I felt a surge of fear and disbelief. I realized that I had been tricked. He was not a seller, but a robber. He had lured me into a trap with a fake phone and a fake story. He was probably not even Ryan. He was a criminal, and I was his victim. I tried to act calm and said, "What? What are you talking about? This is a joke, right?" He shook his head and said, "No, it's not a joke. It's very serious. And you better do what I say, or you'll regret it. I have a knife in my pocket. I'm not afraid to use it. So hand over your money, your purse, your keys, and your phone. Now." He reached for the envelope in my hand, but I pulled it back. I was scared, but I was also angry. I had worked hard for my money, and I was not going to give it up so easily. I decided to fight back. I said, "No, I won't. This is my money, and you can't have it. You're a liar and a thief, and I'm not going to let you get away with this. Help. Someone help me. This guy is trying to rob me." I screamed as loud as I could, hoping to attract attention and help. I hoped that someone would hear me and come to my rescue. I hoped that Ryan would get scared and run away. I hoped that I would be safe. But none of that happened. Instead, Ryan grabbed me by the hair and pulled me towards him. He put the knife to my throat and said, "Shut up, you stupid bitch." He just made a big mistake. The world spun as I felt a sharp pain radiating from my head. Everything went black as I lost consciousness. When I regained awareness, I found myself lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by the sterile smell of antiseptics and the gentle beeping of machines. My head throbbed with dull ache, and I felt disoriented. A nurse noticed my stirring and rushed to my side. "You're awake. How are you feeling?" She asked with a mixture of concern and relief. I struggled to collect my thoughts. What happened? I managed to croak out. "You were attacked," the nurse explained gently. "Someone found you unconscious near the Starbucks, where you were supposed to meet someone. You've been here for a few hours now. Do you remember anything?" Bits and pieces of the harrowing encounter flooded back into my mind. The fake ad, the meeting with the seller, the sudden shift from cordiality to aggression. And then the blow to my head. "I remember," I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. The nurse offered a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry. You're safe now. The police are investigating, and they caught the perpetrator. He's going to face justice for what he did to you." Relief washed over me, mixed with gratitude for the swift action of law enforcement. Despite the trauma, I felt a glimmer of hope, knowing that the person who had inflicted such terror upon me would be held accountable for his actions. As I lay in the hospital bed, surrounded by the warmth of compassionate care, I resolved to reclaim my sense of security and resilience. Though scarred by the ordeal, I refused to let fear dictate my life. With each passing moment, I grew stronger, determined to emerge from this darkness with renewed strength and purpose.